This story is dedicated to anyone who's ever been the family doormat, especially if you're a professional whose family sees your career as a personal free resource. Spoiler alert, I hit my limit, and my sister lost a whole pack of her fur babies and her entire brand over a $3,800 vet bill she refused to acknowledge. I'm Evelyn Evie Colder, 28, and I own a small independent veterinary practice called the Coastal Pet Clinic in Astoria, Oregon. It's not fancy. It's tucked away a block from the main tourist drag, surviving mostly on local goodwill and sheer exhaustion. This is where the nightmares started, on a Tuesday morning that felt like a quiet blessing until the cavalry arrived. I was in the prep room sterilizing instruments for a routine dental surgery, the rhythmic clink, clink, clink of metal on the tray, the only sound besides the gentle hum of the HVAC. Greta, my assistant, a woman whose patience is as legendary as her no-nonsense attitude, called out from the hallway. "Dr. Calder, Buster's paperwork is ready. Mrs. Jennings will be here at 11. "Thanks, Greta. I'll check his pre-op blood work now." I replied, feeling that familiar, grounding calm that comes from being exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm trained to do. That calm was annihilated 30 seconds later. The front door didn't just open, it was slammed against the wall hard enough to make the charming brass welcome bell sound like a panicked warning siren. "Evie, there you are!" The voice was high, bright, and demanding. It was Blair, my older sister, a lifestyle and travel influencer who treats the world like her personal backdrop. Greta, bless her eternally cheerful heart, unknowingly threw me to the wolves. "They're in the back, Blair." Heavy footsteps, multiple pairs plus the scraping sound of cheap plastic pet carriers being dragged across the linoleum filled the hall. I barely had time to yank off my surgical gloves before Blair burst in. Our parents, Diane and Robert Coldwell, trailing closely. They looked like a coordinated attack squad, all wearing matching enormous designer sunglasses pushed up onto their heads, though it was overcast outside. Dad was struggling with two huge carriers, while Mom had leashes wrapped around her wrist like thick, glittering bracelets. 4 dogs were straining against the restraints, yapping hysterically, turning my sterile environment into a circus. "Thank God we found you," Blair chirped, like she hadn't marched into my workplace unannounced and trashed my quiet morning. "We need your help." "What is going on?" I asked, my voice flat with dread. My brain was already cataloging the disaster. 4 dogs, 2 large cats, total chaos, and a looming dental surgery. Dad dropped the cat carriers onto my freshly sanitized floor with a thud. 2 pairs of furious Persian cat eyes, one amber, one blue, glared out from the grates. "We are heading out," Diane announced, finally untangling herself from the leashes. "Right now. Blair booked us an incredible trip." Blair nodded excitedly. "The ultimate road trip. 6 weeks, cross-country. Mom needed to de-stress. So we are doing Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, the whole thing. It's going to be so good for my content. #Caldwell Adventure." I felt my mouth open then close. "And the animals?" "That's why we're here." Blair beamed, radiating the toxic positivity of someone whose plans never encounter resistance. "You're a vet. You have the space. You need to watch them." "I can't just— It's only 6 weeks, Evie." Robert cut in, already backing toward the door. "You've watched them before. This is a family emergency." A family emergency requiring a 6-week, fully planned, content-generating vacation. We didn't have time to pack their food, but you know what they eat, right? And Kingston's been kind of sluggish lately, but he's old, so— She shrugged off her golden retriever's health with a casual wave. Kingston, her prize dog for her pet influencer side brand, was panting heavily beside the 2 small poodle mixes, Pip and Squeak. His coat looked dull, not its usual IG-ready luster. "Blair, I can't just shut down my practice to run a boarding facility," I argued, the desperation rising. "Wait," I yelled. "You can't just leave them here. I need medical records, food instructions, emergency contacts." Robert paused at the doorway, his expression a practiced blend of confused bewilderment and deep injury. You're a vet, Ivy. Helping family is just what you do. It's not a big deal. We'll call you when we're headed back. The front door slammed again. Gone. 60 seconds from invasion to departure. I was left staring at 5 abandoned animals. Kingston, Pip, Squeak, and the 2 furious Persian cats, Milo and Lotus, who were just as bewildered as I was. I was standing shell-shocked in the empty reception area when the door chimed again. Mrs. Jennings walked in with Buster, stopped dead, and her eyes widened at the scene. 2 hissing cat carriers docked near Greta's desk, 3 confused dogs scattered across the waiting area floor. "Dr. Calder?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Is everything all right?" The heat of humiliation crawled up my neck. "Mrs. Jennings, I am so sorry. My family just dropped off their pets without warning. I will get them situated before Buster's procedure." She nodded, but her expression said everything. "This is unprofessional. This is a clinic, not a kennel." I managed to get her to a seat, but the shame of being treated like an on-call servant in my own professional space burned. This wasn't an emergency. This was a planned ambush. The matching designer luggage, the coordinated exit, they calculated this. The memories surfaced like bile. 2 a.m. calls about Milo eating a block of artisan cheese. Robert demanding I come over on Sundays to trim his dog's nails because I was already a vet. Diane expecting free, high-end vaccines while my own practice was struggling to pay the equipment lease. And always, Blair's social media. My personal vet sister at the Coastal Pet Clinic says, as she built her pet influencer empire on my free labor and expertise. My phone pinged. A text from Blair. A selfie from the highway, all 3 wearing those ridiculous sunglasses. "Thanks, sis. You're the best. AD." My hands didn't tremble from anxiety. They trembled with something colder, clearer. Rage. That afternoon, after Mrs. Jennings left with the post-op Buster, I didn't get an immediate response to the invoice. No text, no angry email, nothing. Just the chilling silence of people who genuinely believe the rules and the bills don't apply to them. That email, $4,550 for emergency boarding and specialized care, was my boundary, my first hard no in 28 years, and they simply pretended it didn't exist. Instead, I got the incessant, soul-destroying reality of running an unlicensed, overcrowded kennel inside my professional clinic. 6 weeks of this. 6 weeks of constant noise that transformed the Coastal Pet Clinic into a chaotic, stressful zoo. I started getting cancellations. "Sorry, Dr. Calder, but the incessant barking stressed out my elderly cat last visit. Found a quieter vet." That was the 3rd one that week. Greta, bless her heart, tried everything. Sound blankets, pheromone diffusers, setting up makeshift separation barriers, but the small building was never designed to house 5 diverse, high-strung pets for weeks on end. It was affecting everything. I checked my email for the 100th time. The invoice remained unacknowledged. When I texted Blair about their return plans, I got the dreaded read receipt followed by absolute silence. Today marked the end of the original 3-week trip. They were supposed to be home. I called Blair, straight to voicemail. I called my parents, same result. My stomach nodded as I finally typed a text. "You were supposed to be back today. Where are you?" I watched the status change instantly from delivered to read and waited. Nothing. The clock ticked past noon when my phone finally buzzed. It was Blair. My heart leapt, then sank when the message loaded with a photo. Diane, Robert, and Blair grinning in front of Old Faithful, still wearing those ridiculous sunglasses. The exact same pose as the day they dumped the animals. The caption, "Yellowstone is calling. Having so much fun, we decided to add 3 more weeks. Watch them for us. Love you." The phone clattered onto the stainless steel treatment table. 3 more weeks? That meant 6 weeks total? 6 weeks of canceled appointments? 6 weeks of trying to manage other people's neglected pets in a practice already stretched thin? 6 weeks of being treated like a free on-demand service? "Dr. Calder?" Greta poked her head into the room, her usual steady composure fractured by worry. Mr. Evans called to reschedule Buster's follow-up. He mentioned the noise was unbearable when he came to pick up the meds. I just nodded, unable to speak around the sudden, icy lump of fury in my throat. That was easily $5,000 in canceled or lost revenue this month, money my tiny practice simply couldn't afford to lose. My student loan payment was already late. Later that evening, after Greta left, I sat alone in my office. The clinic was quiet now, save for the occasional whine from the makeshift kennel area. I pulled up my accounts. Columns of red where black should be. I toggled to Blair's Instagram. She had already posted the Yellowstone carousel, ending with a photo of her looking pampered in a huge hotel bed. The caption, "Taking this much-needed break while my personal vet sister at the Coastal Pet Clinic watches my fur babies. Blessed, family, #AstoriaVet." 18,000 likes. My stomach churned with the realization, cold and clear as the Oregon air. This wasn't family helping family. This was calculated exploitation. They were using me, professionally and financially, to fund their influencer vacation. I was a professional, Dr. Evelyn Calder, DVM, and they saw me only as Sophie, the reliable, exploitable little sister. The next morning, Dr. Silas, a kind, older vet from a neighboring town, stopped by to borrow a specialized surgical lamp. He paused at the sight of the chaos. "Evie, this isn't right. They are absolutely taking advantage of you." I rubbed my temples, utterly exhausted. "What choice do I have, Silas? They're family. They left the animals here." He hesitated, looking at the dull-coated golden retriever Kingston, who hadn't moved much. "Family doesn't treat family like unpaid labor, kid. My cousin works in animal law down in Portland. You should at least know your rights." The seed planted itself. Rights. Laws. Boundaries. That night I made the call, the one I had been dreading. Diane answered on the fourth ring, her voice muffled by background noise. "Evie, we're having the most wonderful time. Your father found this charming little—" I interrupted her, my voice low and steady. "You have to come get them. This is 6 weeks. I'm running a business. I'm losing clients." The line went quiet for a moment. Then she gave that brittle, dismissive laugh. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Evie. They're fine. You're a vet. What's the big deal? Your sister needs this break." "My clinic is not a kennel," I insisted, my voice rising slightly. "I've lost 4 clients. I can't—" "We'll talk about this when we get back," she cut in, her tone signaling the conversation was over. "I need to go. Your father's waiting for dinner." The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. They hadn't heard a word. My stand was ignored, dismissed with the casual cruelty of people who knew I would cave, who knew I would keep feeding the animals, cleaning their cages, and absorbing the cost. But something had shifted. The Evie who accepted demands was gone. In her place was Dr. Calder, the professional who finally understood that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is draw a legal, uncrossable line. I knew exactly where that line needed to be. Social media notifications chimed from my phone. More vacation photos. I swiped them away. 4 weeks into this nightmare, and their digital postcards had transformed from irritating to infuriating. They were smiling while I was drowning. The cramped kennel setup had transformed my weeding room into what looked like an unlicensed boarding facility. The constant bark howls symphony continued all day. I scribbled a note on my calendar, another client cancellation. Their silence was calculated. They knew I wouldn't abandon the animals. They were calling my bluff, waiting for me to break and accept the imposition with the resigned smile I'd worn my whole life. I gathered the evening medication trays, preparing for final rounds. Milo and Lotus ate quickly, but Kingston, Blair's prize golden retriever, hadn't touched his dinner for 2 days. His water dish remained full. "Come on, boy," I coaxed, kneeling beside him. His amber eyes looked dull, unfocused. When I stroked his flank, his fur felt slightly matted, despite Greta's daily brushing. Blair always joked about Kingston being lazy, using his sleepy demeanor for quiet, cozy content. Such a boring dog, she'd laugh, but his face is Instagram gold. Now, examining him, professional alarm bells were shrieking. His gums looked pale, his breathing was slightly labored. I checked his chart. 10 years old, well into senior territory. No medical history on file, of course, because Blair never bothered to provide one. "We'll keep an eye on you tonight," I told him, making a note to recheck before I locked up. After closing, I deep-cleaned kennels for an extra hour, hoping physical labor would burn off some of the churning anger. I was wiping down the reception counter when a heavy thud, followed by a series of desperate whimpers, erupted from the back. I ran into the kennel room. Kingston was collapsed on his side, panting heavily, eyes wide with panic. "No, no, no!" I dropped to my knees, my clinical training instantly taking over. Temperature elevated, pulse rapid and weak, abdomen tender. He whimpered when I pressed gently along his sides. I grabbed my phone, fingers trembling as I punched in Dr. Wallace's number. She ran the specialty emergency hospital across town. "Susan, it's Evie Calder. I need immediate emergency ultrasound access. Possible kidney failure in a 10-year-old golden. ETA 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, I was following Susan's headlights through the empty Astoria streets, Kingston whimpering softly in my backseat, wrapped in a clinic blanket. His large body trembled against me each time I reached back to reassure him. The emergency hospital blazed with harsh light. Susan met me at the door, transferring Kingston to a waiting gurney. Her team sprang into action. IV line, blood draw, temperature check. The medical choreography that usually calmed me failed to quiet the white-hot rage building in my chest. "How long has he been showing symptoms?" Susan asked, drawing blood. "I don't know," I bit out, the words tasting like ash. "His owner dropped him with me a month ago and said he was just lazy." Susan's expression shifted from professional concern to something hard and knowing. "Family?" "My sister," I confirmed. She simply nodded, understanding everything in those 2 words. 3 hours of tests confirmed my worst fears. Advanced kidney disease, severely dehydrated, creatinine levels dangerously elevated. This wasn't something that developed overnight. This had been building for months, possibly a year. All those times Blair joked about him being lazy. He wasn't lazy, he was desperately sick. "He needs immediate fluid therapy, medication, special diet," Susan said, reviewing the ultrasound. "We can stabilize him tonight, but he'll need ongoing intensive care." I nodded mechanically as she outlined the treatment plan. When she handed me the estimate, the numbers swam before my eyes. $3,800. "Start treatment right away," I heard myself say. "I'll put down the deposit from my savings." Back in my car at 2 a.m., exhaustion crashed over me, but the rage held me rigid. I dialed Blair's number. Voicemail. "Blair, it's Evie." My voice was tight, unfamiliar, controlled. "Kingston collapsed. He's at the emergency hospital with kidney failure. I just paid $3,800 to save his life. You need to call me back immediately. This is not a joke. You ignored this." I followed up with a text containing the same information, attaching a photo of the staggering $3,800 invoice. It showed as delivered, then read, almost instantly. Then nothing. No typing bubble, no callback, just silence. I waited for 15 minutes in that cold parking lot outside the emergency clinic, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. Nothing. She saw the message. She read the words, "kidney failure and $3,800" and chose silence. By morning, I still hadn't received a single response from Blair or my parents. I called Dr. Silas, who covered my morning appointments without hesitation. "Take the day, Evie. This is a critical patient emergency and honestly, you need to sleep," he said. When I returned to the specialty hospital, Susan walked me through Kingston's improved condition. The IV fluids were helping already. "You did the right thing, Evie," Susan said, reviewing his chart. "This dog has been neglected. You need to document everything." The word neglected hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just an inconvenience anymore. This wasn't just family taking advantage. This was potentially criminal neglect of an animal. I drove home in a fog, showered mechanically, and collapsed into bed. When I woke up 3 hours later, my phone showed no missed calls from family, just a new Instagram post from Blair, a filtered photo of her at a roadside diner, caption reading, "Best pancakes in Wyoming," #blessed, #road trip. Something hard and crystalline shifted inside me. My anger cooled into absolute resolve. I opened my laptop and searched, Oregon Pet Abandonment Laws. The results loaded instantly. ORS 87-159, Animal Abandonment, Possessory Lien. I read the statute 3 times, making meticulous notes. The law required a 14-day formal notice period after the formal abandonment notification. After that, legal ownership could be transferred. I immediately began gathering documentation, screenshots of the original 3-week texts, the 3-week extension message, the $3,800 emergency hospital invoice, and the read receipts on my desperate messages about Kingston. I spent the afternoon creating a detailed timeline, printing everything. When finished, I had a 1-inch stack of papers documenting 6 weeks of planned, calculated abandonment culminating in willful ignorance of a medical emergency. My clinic phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. The Coastal Pet Clinic, Dr. Calder speaking. This is Martin Reynolds, attorney at law. Dr. Silas suggested you might need some guidance on an animal abandonment case. I let out a slow, steady breath. Yes, I do. The next morning, I stood at the Astoria post office counter holding a thick envelope addressed to my parents' home address. Inside was the formal abandonment notice, outlining the medical emergency, the ignored communications, and the 14-day deadline before legal ownership would transfer. It was all notarized, all documented, all irrefutable. Immediately after mailing the certified letter, I took photos of the letter itself, the $3,800 invoice, and the post office receipt. I sent all of these to Blair and my parents via email and text, but just like every other time, no one responded. The 14-day waiting period stretched before me like a tightrope. 14 days of caring for animals that weren't mine, 14 days of administering Kingston's expensive kidney medication, 14 days of documenting every single expense in meticulous detail, and 14 days of deafening silence. My fingers hovered over my phone, the urge to call them crawling up my arm like an insistent itch. I set the device down and returned to my paperwork instead. The certified letter I sent had been marked delivered 3 days ago. Someone, a neighbor, a family friend, or the mail carrier, had signed for it at their house. The clock was ticking. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the clinic, casting the same rectangles across the linoleum that were there the day they ambushed me. It had been 52 days. I checked Kingston's chart, noting his improved blood work values. The kidney medication was working despite how late we caught the disease. "How's our golden boy doing today?" Greta asked, leaning against the door frame of my office. Her gray hair was pulled into its usual practical bun, her scrubs dotted with cartoon pets. "Better. His creatinine levels are stabilizing," I said, closing the folder.
Did Mrs. Peterson call about her dental appointment? Rescheduled for next Tuesday. Greta lingered, her eyes fixed on the calendar where I'd marked day 10 of the waiting period in red pen. Have you heard anything from them? The question knotted my stomach. No. Are you going to call them before the deadline? The question had plagued me for days. Would a final human warning be the right thing to do? The professional thing? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks I should. Greta's expression hardened. Did the letter state the consequences, Dr. Calder? Yes. The certified letter had been painfully clear. My attorney had made sure of that. Then you've done your part, Greta said, straightening her scrubs. They are adults. This is their choice. The stark simplicity of her statement loosened something in my chest. They are adults. This is their choice. Their choice to dump 5 animals on me without warning. Their choice to extend their vacation without permission. Their choice to ignore Kingston's medical emergency. Their choice to ignore a legal notice. You're right. Greta nodded once, satisfied, and returned to the reception area. I fed the animals lunch, refilled water bowls, and administered medications. Each action was documented in my logbook with the same precision I used for surgical records: time, date, expense, observation. I had become a clinical observer of their abandonment. The two Persian cats, Milo and Lotus, had adapted the best. They now lounged in the extended kennels I'd built, watching me with that particular feline indifference that suggested I existed solely to serve them. The two poodle mixes, Pip and Squeak, still barked frantically whenever the door opened, expecting Blair or my parents. Kingston no longer did. He watched the door with liquid brown eyes, but had stopped struggling to his feet at every sound. His resignation felt like a betrayal on their behalf. 4 more days passed. I was in my small apartment above the clinic when my phone chimed with a text from Blair. My heart leaped, then plummeted when I saw it wasn't about the animals. It was another vacation photo. Blair in a sun hat, standing before the Grand Teton Mountains, captioned, "Best day ever. Blessed. AD." I threw the phone onto my couch. Their silence was their counterattack. They believed I was bluffing. They knew I was a caretaker at heart. They were still enjoying their power, absolutely certain I would break first, that I would just absorb the $3,800 medical bill like I'd absorbed everything else. In Blair's mind, I would never actually do anything to hurt her brand or her fur babies because I loved the animals too much. Day 14 arrived with the same morning light, the same geometric rectangles across the floor. I performed surgeries, saw clients, and cared for the animals. Kingston's medication cost $174 per week. I documented it. At 4:30 p.m., I looked at the clock. 30 minutes until the legal deadline. Dr. Silas came in at 4:45, coffee mug in hand. He set a cup on my desk without comment. The gesture spoke volumes. "Any word?" I shook my head. "What will you do if no one shows up?" "Follow the law." My voice sounded calmer than I expected. "I've already contacted Seaside Animal Adoptions here in Astoria. Kate knows the situation." Silas nodded, understanding the significance. Kate's organization was known for its rigorous adoption screening. They didn't place animals with just anyone. "You've given them every chance." "I know." The minute hand ticked forward. Outside, rain started to fall, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. At 5 p.m. precisely, I closed the logbook. No calls, no emails, no one at the door. The legal deadline had arrived. They officially, legally, did not want their animals. My hand didn't shake when I picked up the phone. The number was already programmed into my contacts. "Kate, it's Evie Calder." My voice echoed in the quiet office. "I have 5 legal surrenders for you. The paperwork is all here." Through the line, Kate's voice was professional, empathetic. "I'll be there first thing tomorrow morning, Evie." I hung up and sat in the silence of my office. The only sounds were Pip's occasional whine and the rain against the windows. Their overconfidence, their absolute certainty in my fatal flaw of being the nice sister, had become their legal undoing.
Their failure to respond was the entire case. "Do you want me to stay, doctor?" Silas asked from the doorway. "No." I looked up at him. "Thank you. I'm fine." And strangely, I was. The anger that had been burning in my chest for weeks had crystallized into something harder, clearer. I was no longer waiting for their response, their permission, or their acknowledgement. For the first time since they walked into my clinic 7 weeks ago, I wasn't reacting to them. I was acting entirely on my own. I checked on the animals one final time before locking up. Tomorrow they would start new lives with people who actually wanted them. People who wouldn't treat them as accessories, afterthoughts, or burdens to be dumped when inconvenient. Kingston looked up at me, thumping his tail weakly against the heating blanket I'd placed in his kennel. I scratched behind his ears. "You'll be okay," I told him. And this time, I knew it was true. The rain had stopped by the time I left. Water glistened on the parking lot asphalt, reflecting the neon sign of my clinic. The Coastal Pet Clinic glowed steadily in the growing darkness. marking the boundary between my professional space and the world outside. I had defended that boundary at last. Whatever came tomorrow, I had done what needed to be done, not out of anger, not out of revenge, out of respect. For myself, for these animals, for the law. I drove home in silence, the windows open to the damp coastal air, feeling strangely light. The weight of waiting had finally lifted. I watched Kate from Seaside Animal Adoptions kneel beside Kingston, her practiced hands moving gently across his thinning golden coat. The morning sunlight caught in his amber eyes as he leaned into her touch. It had been 7 weeks since my family ambushed me. 7 weeks of chaos. His medication schedule is in the folder, I explained, handing over the thick manila envelope crammed with documentation. The kidney disease is advanced. He'll need the phosphate binders with every single meal. Kate flipped through the file, the certified mail receipt, the text messages, the $3,800 emergency vet bill, her expression hardening with each page. "Evie," she whispered, looking up at me. "They never responded to any of this?" I shook my head. Not a word. She closed the folder with a decisive snap. "You saved this dog's life. We'll find them all perfect homes, especially Kingston. I know a retired couple who specialize in senior pets with medical needs." "Will they stay together? The dogs, I mean?" I asked, my throat tight. "We'll try, but honestly, separating them might be better for Kingston. He needs specialized, quiet care." I knelt beside the golden retriever, running my fingers through his fur one last time. For years, I had treated him for free, while Blair posted his photos for likes and sponsorships. "I'm sorry, old friend," I murmured. Kate touched my shoulder. "Don't apologize. You're doing the right thing. This isn't abandonment, Evie. It's a rescue." I nodded, signing the surrender papers with a steady hand. The crushing weight of 7 weeks lifted from my shoulders with each signature. By the time Kate loaded the 5 carriers, Kingston, Pip, Squeak, Milo, and Lotus into her van, I felt lighter than I had in years. The following week passed in blessed quiet. My clinic returned to its normal, sane operation. I slept through the night without checking kennels or administering midnight medications. Mrs. Jennings, bringing Buster in for his follow-up, commented on how rested I looked. Then, the brass bell above the door jangled violently. I looked up from my charts to see Blair burst into the waiting room, our parents, Diane and Robert, trailing behind her. All 3 wore matching resort tans and generic tourist t-shirts. "Evie," Blair called out, her voice bright with that trademark entitlement. "We're back. Where are my babies?" Diane glanced around the empty reception area, frowning. "Are they in the back? They must be so excited we're home." I set down my pen and stood, wiping my hands carefully on a towel. The calm that filled me wasn't numbness, it was absolute clarity. I studied their expectant, slightly irritated faces, seeing for the first time how they had always viewed me, not as a person, but as a utility. "They're not here." Blair's smile faltered. "What do you mean not here? Are they at your apartment?" "No." Robert stepped forward, his brow furrowing in practiced paternal authority. "Evie, stop being difficult. Where are the animals?" I walked to my desk and removed a single, thick manila envelope from the top drawer. My hand didn't tremble as I held it out to Blair. "What's this?" She snatched it, tearing it open. I watched her face transform as she pulled out the contents, the screenshot of the 6-week extension text, the printout of the $3,800 emergency vet bill, the certified mail receipt, and the business card for Seaside Animal Adoptions. "What did you do?" Her voice rose to a shriek, the influencer facade finally shattering. Diane grabbed the papers, eyes widening as she scanned them. "You gave away our pets? How could you do this to your family?" Robert's face darkened to a dangerous red. "This is unforgivable, Evie. You had no right." "I had every legal right," I interrupted, my voice steady, professional, and entirely devoid of emotion. I sent a certified letter and an email explaining the situation after Kingston's medical emergency. You were given 14 days to respond, per Oregon State Law ORS 87159. You chose not to. At that point, legal ownership was forfeited. But we were on vacation, Blair wailed, genuine tears finally welling up. A vacation you extended to 7 weeks without my consent, I countered, while dumping 5 animals in my clinic without food, supplies, or medical records. We'll go get them right now, Robert declared, turning toward the door. Good luck with that, I said. The 2 cats, Milo and Lotus, are still with the rescue. They require a 4-week mandatory pet ownership course for negligent owners before they will even consider an application. The dogs were adopted yesterday. Blair froze. What? All 3 dogs, Kingston, Pip, and Squeak, were adopted together by a family experienced in senior kidney care. Kingston will finally get the treatment he needs. Diane's voice wavered. Kingston? What's wrong with Kingston? Chronic kidney disease. That laziness Blair always joked about, it was organ failure. He collapsed in the middle of the night 6 weeks ago. I paid $3,800 to save his life while Blair was posting vacation selfies. Blair's face crumpled. You should have called. I did, I corrected, leaning over the desk slightly. I sent a text and you read it at 2 a.m. with the invoice and ignored it. I didn't think it was that serious. Because you never think, Blair. You never have to. Evie will handle it. Evie will fix it. Evie will pay for it. Not anymore. My voice remained calm, a low, powerful tremor. I am no longer the 24/7 on-call resource for people who don't care if their own pets live or die. My clinic is not a free kennel. If you want Milo and Lotus back, you can apply to adopt them like every other vetted applicant. Is this how you treat family? Robert gestured wildly around the empty reception area. After everything we've done for you? I met his gaze, the professional veneer finally cracking just enough to let the raw truth through. Everything you've done? Dad, I've provided tens of thousands of dollars in free veterinary care while struggling to pay off my student loans and keep this business alive. You took and took until there was nothing left and then demanded more. The 3 of them stood frozen, mouths agape. I had never spoken to them this way. Not as their daughter, their sister, their Evie, but as Dr. Calder, a professional with inviolable boundaries. Get out of my clinic, I commanded, turning back to my paperwork. I have paying clients to attend to. Diane recovered first, drawing herself up with wounded dignity. Come on, Robert. We're going to that rescue center right now. They'll understand when we explain what she did. The door slammed. Behind them, the reception bell jangled with a triumphant finality. I sank into my chair, exhaling slowly. The clinic felt different now. Cleaner. Lighter. Mine.
For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel the crushing weight of guilt. I didn't feel the need to apologize for enforcing a boundary. I felt free. 2 weeks later, Blair buzzed the front desk. Dr. Calder, your sister's here, Greta announced. I sent her back. Blair appeared in my office doorway looking diminished. Her makeup was minimal, her designer clothes replaced by plain jeans and a sweater. The Instagram polish had faded completely. Hi, she said, her voice lacking its usual demanding edge. How did it go at the rescue? I asked, gesturing to the chair. She sat, her shoulders curved forward. They told me the dogs are gone, all 3, adopted together. They said a family with experience in kidney disease wanted them, that Kingston needed specialized care. She swallowed hard. The rescue let me adopt the cats back. I had to take a pet ownership course first. 4 weeks of classes. She placed a sealed envelope on my desk. I paid them. This is for the adoption fees. I stared at the envelope, remembering countless ignored invoices, texts unread, and calls sent to voicemail. This small act of responsibility felt monumental. I'm enrolled in another course too, she continued, looking up, about senior pet health. The instructor said Kingston's symptoms were textbook kidney failure. I never understood. Love has to come with responsibility, I said quietly. Yes, she whispered, tears spilling over. Just like family has to come with respect. She wiped her eyes, nodded, and stood up, straightening her shoulders. I should go. The cats need feeding on a schedule now. After she left, I finished my patient notes, cleaned the exam room, and checked on our one overnight boarder, a fully paying client with a signed contract. At closing time, I turned off the lights and locked the door. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Diane. Your sister is very upset. I think you were too hard on them. I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I switched my phone off and slid it back into my pocket. The damp coastal air carried a hint of salt and mist as I walked to my car. For the first time in years, I was heading home to a quiet apartment where no one would call at midnight about a dog who ate chocolate, or expect free vaccines, or demand my expertise without acknowledgement. I drove away from the clinic, leaving the weight of guilt and obligation behind, finally at peace.